Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 145, Beggar. Several days later, the garrison troops of Tse province who were escorting and transporting the grain wagons arrived in Cha province. Fei Sheng returned to the residence to give Shen Zequan a full report of the happenings in Cha province. At the same time, he handed over his records of the prices of goods in the two prefectures of Huai province and Fan province. Not only that, he had even gotten to the bottom of Lei Changming's and Lei Jing's backgrounds. Lei Changming was a native of Cha province who had his beginnings as an armed escort. This was all open and common knowledge of his background. Fei Sheng, who had made inquiries all over Cha province with the help from the shops in Juexi, learned that Lei Changming had engaged in the flesh trade during the reign of Emperor Yanji, as divulged by the elderly people in Cha province. Back then, both prefectures of Dun province and Duan province saw a burgeoning rise in the numbers of the entertainment quarters across their territories, leading to the proliferation of famous courtesans like Shen Zequan's mother, Bai Cha. Subsequently, Lei Changming scoured the lands of Deng province, tricking innocent and naive women and reselling them to Dun province and Duan province as prostitutes. Afterward, Shen Wei ordered for the brothels along the banks of the Hashi River to close down, thereby causing the businesses in Duan province to fall into drastic decline. Lei Changming had no connections in Duan province and could only look for another way out. Lei Changming, who had until then been trying to get by, wanted to resume his old trade. He hence capitalized on the reputation of the Zhu clan and went around making connections with the officials in Zongbo. In the process of his associating with these officials, he found out that these people dreaded the time after spring every year when the Chief Surveillance Bureau would make field trips to conduct inspections and audits. As the imperial censors had the right to impeach, the appraisals of the officials involved would undoubtedly be affected. This was an important affair pertaining to their own promotions and transfers, and as such, they did not dare to act rashly and visit the brothels for pleasure during this time. Lei Changming thus hit upon an idea. He set up a Mingshu Hall in Fan province, which has a front of being a tea house for poetry discourse. However, in reality, he posted the decent women he sourced up there as secret prostitutes to bribe the various officials. However, this business did not last long either, ruined at the hands of Shen Wei. At this point in the record, Fei Sheng had specifically made a note at the side. Shen Wei had spies and informers everywhere in the various prefectures. Ever since he married Bai Cha, he had been rather heavy-handed in his attempts to crush the brothel trade in the various prefectures. Lei Changming's Mingshu Hall had not been established for even a year when it was wiped out at lightning speed by Shen Wei. Abducting and trafficking women of decent origins was punishable by law. To escape responsibility for the crimes, Lei Changming instructed his subordinate to take his place, while he hurried over to the prefecture of Dun province where he offered Shen Wei a large sum of cold, hard silver ingots before he managed to extricate himself. After this incident, Lei Changming reverted to his ways of idling around doing nothing. His wife and son had passed away early, but he did not take a concubine at that point in time. He had a penchant for grooming children ever since he abducted and sold women a long time back. But he was too brutal towards them, and none of those children ever survived. At the end of the reign of Emperor Yanji, Lei Changming took on the Yan clan of He province's job to provide armed escort as a means of livelihood. Subsequently, he got into the Yan clan's good graces. It was from then on that he really started to enjoy a meteoric rise. There was no mention of a jade bead or earring in this record. Shen Zequan closed the book and contemplated it for a moment. It's strange. Children who can wear earrings are either wealthy or noble. Even if Lei Changming dared to abduct and traffic those of decent backgrounds in Zongbo, he would not dare to lay a hand on the noble clan's heirs from the 8 cities of Chu capital. Master has guessed it right. I heard about this from my inquiries too, but I can't very well include it in the report without evidence, so I have to report this to you in person. Fei Sheng stood beside the table and turned his head back to look at Li Xiang, who was in the courtyard. I spoke to that lad, 2, and I more or less have an idea. During the reign of Emperor Yanji, Lei Changming saved the young master of the Yan clan, Yan Hiru. That child did indeed wear an earring. He was a good-looking child too, said to be fair and exquisite, and he was the apple of the Yan clan's eye. Lei Changming took young master Yan back. Well, as master has seen in person, this man was a beast, and he actually harbored indecent thoughts towards that young master Yan. Shenzhequan snapped his folding fan shut. Fei Sheng continued, but he didn't dare to. It just so happened at that time that Xiao from the Ministry of War was imprisoned, and the male descendants of the Xiao clan were all sentenced to execution. In order to preserve their bloodline, the old matriarch of the Xiao clan had the last remaining grandson of lawful birth disguised as a girl. This legitimate grandson of the Xiao clan was escorted into exile in Zongbo, where he happened to fall into the hands of Lei Changming. When Fei Sheng reached this point, Qiao Tianya, who had a book on his face, suddenly sat up. The Xiao clan? The Xiao clan from the Ministry of War during the reign of Emperor Yanji? The Ministry of War Vice Minister, Xiao Chengbi. Fei Sheng clapped his hands. Right. That's the one. Do you know him? Qiao Tianya stood up in a flash, momentarily stupefied for quite a while before he answered, of course I know him. Master, I've told you before that I'm the son of Qiao family from the Ministry of War. Xiao Chengbi and my father were close friends. Not only that, Xiao Chengbi was an official that the Grand Tutor single-handedly promoted. It was just that he wasn't good at socializing, so he hardly interacted with the Grand Tutor. Later on, he married the elder sister of the current Minister of War, Chen Zhen. It was because of this that he had a narrow escape when everyone in the Eastern Palace was being hunted down, and that was also how he was spared from being exterminated by the Empress Dowager. Fei Sheng nodded. That's what happened. But Xiao Chengbi did not make friendly overtures towards the Hua clan and Pan factions. To remove him, Hua Saiqian abused the power of his own authority at the end of the reign of Emperor Yanji and had Ji Lei command the Jinyi Wei to frame him as one of the participants of the Eastern Palace's rebellion case, causing all his family's possessions and properties to be confiscated and sealed off. Shenzhequan then understood. Lei Changming did not dare to lay his hands on Yan Hiru, so he used the legitimate grandson of the Xiao clan as a substitute instead. Fei Sheng continued, the legitimate grandson of the Xiao clan was older than Yan Hiru, but even so, he was merely 9 years old at that time, and he was a grandchild of lawful birth doted on and pampered by all in the Xiao clan. Before old matriarch Xiao met her end, she pleaded with all her old acquaintances before she could have him swapped over and sent out of Chu capital. But who would have thought that he would be ravaged by Lei Changming when he arrived in Zongbo? Lei Changming was extremely brutal. The first reason was that he always liked to drink wine before doing the deed, and so his restraint was impaired, and he did not hold himself back. The second reason was that he wanted to stamp out the root of future troubles. Drag the child out and bury him once the child was dead, and this matter would be considered over and done with. Chai Yu was the one who asked around and found out about it. My guess is that it's also because of this matter that Lei Changming had a falling out with the Yan clan later. This was the first assignment Fei Sheng was handling for Shenzhequan, so he naturally had to do a splendid job of it. Fei Sheng then continued to give his detailed report on Luomu of Cha process. In the process of listening, Shenzhequan eyed Qiao Tianya. Qiao Tianya's mind was preoccupied. After Fei Sheng took his leave, he took the opportunity to chat with Qiao Tianya in between the changing of shifts. There's no need to ask me. Fei Sheng rubbed his hands together, washing the space between his fingers clean. Any news I have regarding the legitimate grandson of the Xiao clan came from the bandits in Cha province. You know this, too. He's nowhere as important as Yan Hiru, so who would remember his existence back then? 8 or 9 out of 10 of the people who fell into Lei Changming's hands ended up dead, and even if they didn't, Fei Sheng sighed, feeling complicated, there's no way they can continue living. Qiao Tianya faked a relaxed demeanor and merely said, "Did I even ask you? I didn't plan on asking." Fei Shen looked at him in disdain and used his fingers to gesture at the distance between them. "You know, in all probability, the reason you waltzed over here was to ask about the matter. It has been so many years since this incident happened. If you really can't get over things, pretend he's still alive. There is no need to pretend." Qiao Tianya took a few steps down the stairs and raised his arms to pillow them at the back of his head, squinting his eyes slightly as he faced the sunlight. He spoke with an air of nonchalance, "If he's dead, he's dead. It's so much more pleasantly cool to be buried under the ground." *******. In just a few days, it'd be the end of the 7th month, where wagons of silver returned as wagons of grain left Tse province. Autumn was just around the corner, and Zhou Gui was worried that the grains in Huai province would be bought up by the other places. Now that they had money, Zhou Gui began discussion with his advisors on the issue. This business with Huai province needed to be settled as soon as possible. Shen Zequan headed to the study for the discussion, and after listening, he only asked one question: "What does Mr. Cheng Feng think?" Kong Ling hesitated for a moment. "As I've said to His Excellency last night, going to Huai province right now is too hasty. I do not approve." Zhou Gui, who was sitting in the less honorary seat next to Shen Zequan, nodded as he spoke. "Cheng Feng did indeed say that when we were discussing the details last night. However, Vice Commander, some parts of Juexi were struck by natural disasters this year, and the Provincial Administration Commissioner, Zhang Qingshan, has also been transferred away. The areas with grain shortage will no doubt have to buy it from other prefectures. Huai province is close to Chu capital and the autumn harvest is on the horizon. I'm worried that Juexi will sign a deal with them before we do." Zhou Gui's worries were not without reason. The granaries that Tse province had emptied out to conduct this trade were meant to be kept for emergency use, so it wasn't reassuring to be holding on to all these silvers in hand with no grains in their reserves. During the past few days, Shen Zequan had been planning out a trip to Huai province, but he was hesitant not for just this one reason but also because Chu capital's transfer papers for Zhang Qingshan had still not been issued. Regardless of whether this person was sent back to Juexi or reassigned somewhere else, he would inevitably affect the trade of grains in Tse province. If Zhang Qingshan was deployed to Huai province, then their business deal with Huai province, if negotiated now, was likely to end up voided. Shen Zequan was in a quandary. "The concerns of Mr. and Your Excellency are not without reason. I've also been pondering over the issue regarding Huai province for the last few days. According to our earliest proposed plans, it would naturally be better to get it done as soon as possible. But as things stand now, figuring out how to avoid Chu capital's scrutiny is a concern, too." Kong Ling said from the side, "Moreover, we have to borrow the tracks from Libei for the passage of our money wagons, and this matter still needs to be discussed with the heir apparent. But in all probability, Xiao Shi Sui will not stop us. We are borrowing the bridle paths of the Libei armored cavalry and converting these silvers into grains to replenish their supplies. At present, Libei will naturally be happy to agree. I'm only worried about one thing, and that is, how do we get past Loxia Pass? The Loxia Pass garrison troops still fall directly under the jurisdiction and control of Chu capital, and they lack neither grains nor money. Libei can still pull some strings with them, but what about Tse province? Given Shen Zequan's relationship with Xiao Qi, he could also ask for a favor with Loxia Pass on account of their friendly ties when it really boiled down to it. But this was built on the basis that Xiao Fangxiu and Xiao Jiming were willing to acknowledge Shen Zequan. Otherwise, relying on Xiao Qi alone, well, apologies, the second young master at present doesn't really have that much of a prestige yet. By bringing this matter up, Kong Ling was also tactfully conveying the fact that they were not that close to Libei. They had to settle the accounts due if they wanted to borrow the tracks for their own use, and it would not be that easy either if they wanted to borrow troops in the future. At first, They all thought that Xiao Qiye was going back to succeed his father and elder brother and carve out a distinguished career for himself, but based on the way things looked at present, Xiao Qiye was even lower in rank than the commanding generals at the battlefield. It was not that generals in charge of supplies were not important, but there was simply no comparison when it came to reputation and prestige. They discussed in the study until dusk, but still failed to reach a conclusion. When Shen Zequin returned to his residence, he saw Ding Tao and Li Xiong waiting to receive him at the entrance. Ding Tao did not return to Libei, and he was not included in any of the duty shifts either, so he spent the whole day practicing shadow boxing at Ji Gang's side with Li Xiong. They had nothing to do in the afternoon after they were done with training in the morning, and thus, both of them ran wild all over the place, playing to their heart's content for the entirety of the 7th month. Ding Tao was no longer upset now. He had forgotten all about Chen Yang and Gu Jin. There was also no one to nag at him when he ate sweets at night. It was only when he got a toothache that Jiao Tianya would lecture him. "Young master, there are quite a number of beggars in the city today." Ding Tao followed Shen Zequin and said, "They are all starving to the point that they're sallow and emaciated. They said they came from Dan City. His Excellency, you went out in the morning to buy an entire bamboo steamer basket worth of steamed buns, and they even fought with one another over those buns." Shen Zequin paused in his tracks. Seeing as the sky was still bright, he said to Jiao Tianya, "Let's go take a look." Tse province had barely started reorganizing its census registry. If refugees entered, they would all have to head to the prefectural yamen to report their names and places of origin. This was to prevent bandits from sneaking into the city. This matter was already being taken care of. The reason Shen Zequin especially came down to take a look was because Ding Tao had brought up Dan City. When they arrived, Yu Xiaoze was giving out steamed buns. Fei Sheng and Jiao Tianya stepped forward to help, and Yu Xiaoze repeatedly thanked them. "Yijing," Shen Zequin spoke gently, "bring them to the prefectural yamen and there will be people giving out steamed buns and porridge. There is no need for you to bear the expense." Yu Xiaoze had come to Tse province on foot with very little money with him. Now that he lost his official position and was unwilling to work for Zhou Gui as an aide, he stayed in Shen Zequin's residence and let Shen Zequin support him. But he was very thrifty and often provided literary services to the others. It was only during this period of time did he manage to save up a couple of taels, and now they had all been used to buy these steamed buns. Yu Xiaoze said, "There are only so many rations that the yamen can distribute daily. Most of those who come late are the old, weak, sick, and widowed. It's rather pitiful for them to go hungry. In any case, money is but mere worldly possession." Shen Zequin was also getting suspicious after seeing such a great number of refugees. Dan City was one of the 8 cities of Chu capital. They did not encounter a natural disaster this year, and they even provided supplies to Han Jin's 8 great training divisions. The imperial army even had a feast there when they passed by the city, so how could there be so many refugees all of a sudden? Jiao Tianya was handing steamed buns into the hands of the refugees one at a time when he suddenly heard a commotion behind him. Shen Zequin shifted his gaze over and saw several ruffians causing a disturbance as they tried to pull away someone else's donkey. Fei Sheng saw Shen Zequin's expressionless face and promptly bundled up the steamed buns and waved his hand to get the Jinyi Wei to go over and pull them apart. He yelled, "What are you people doing such a ruckus for?" One of the ruffians had seen the Jinyi Wei at work before. As he was dragged away, with both legs trailing on the ground, he said in a panic, "My good sir, it's not us who are causing a commotion. These few people first said they wanted to sell the donkey, but they wouldn't give it to me after I paid up. Tell me, is this not a scam?" Upon hearing that, Fei Sheng turned his head and spoke down at the men. "Don't you people ever check who is in charge here before coming over to swindle and defraud others? Hurry and give the donkey to him." The few disheveled and unkempt men timidly tugged the rope and stuffed it into Fei Sheng's hands. The donkey brayed from the tugs. A hand that had been squeezed back behind them slapped at the ground haphazardly and muttered ambiguously, "That's my donkey." Fei Sheng had sharp hearing, but he did not want to complicate the issue, so he pretended not to have heard it. The ruffian stomped on the hand so hard that it clenched into a fist from the pain and pounded on the ground. But an unidentified person at the back pulled him away until that hand abruptly vanished from sight. Fei Sheng handed the donkey over. Feeling a slight weight on his shoe, he lowered his head for a look. It was a kitten so smeared with dirt that it was all gray and dusty. Fei Sheng bent over to pick it up. "Tao Sui, here's a little playmate." Before Fei Sheng could finish his words, that hand showed up once again, revealing only the tips of its fingers as it dug into the ground until it was all bloodied mud between the crevices of its fingers. My cat." This person crawled over, his forehead scraping against the ground. The ruffian behind saw Fei Sheng turning over and hurriedly dragged the person back by the ankles to hide him. Fei Sheng realized that this person's legs were in bad shape and wondered if they had been broken when this person had taken a beating. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 146, Yuan Zhou. Shen Zequan suddenly said, "Ding Tao." Ding Tao kept his little book away and leaped over the obstruction to grab the arm of one of them. "What are you people hiding? Move away for the young master to take a look." Fei Sheng noted their shifty eyes and hemming and hawing, so he bellowed, "What? Is this donkey not yours?" A sharp-eyed Ding Tao yelled, "Young master, there's a man below." The surrounding Jin Yue stepped forth and encircled them. Most of these people were local ruffians from Dan City, and they could not help but cower in fear when they saw the hostile expressions of the Jin Yue. More so when these Jin Yue were armed with swords. Therefore, before Fei Sheng could even give his order, they all dispersed in an uproar, revealing the man on the ground. Yu Xiaoze lifted the hem of his robe and moved in closer for a look. He bent over and exclaimed in shock, "Why is there so much blood? Quick, help him up quickly and call for a physician." Fei Sheng squatted down to check on the man. "These legs are beyond help. Someone broke them." This man refused to look up, instead propping himself up for a moment to say in a hoarse voice, "The cat is mine." Embarrassed, Fei Sheng picked the cat up and put it before the man as he explained, "I thought it was a stray cat. Is this donkey yours, too? You're not from Dan City, are you?" The man did not answer. He coughed at the ground. As he covered his lips, Fei Sheng caught a glimpse of the handkerchief in his palm. This handkerchief was exquisite. Even though it was dirty, its quality and material were not something a commoner would have. These fingers were long and slender, without any calluses on them. It was not the hand belonging to someone used to manual labor or menial work. In an instant, Fei Sheng changed his attitude and said, "Let me help you up. You can no longer walk on these legs of yours, and you are so badly ill. The most important thing at present is to have a physician take a look at you as soon as possible." The man suddenly clenched his fists, and his coughing intensified. The handkerchief he used to cover his lips was stained with blood. He was clearly in a terrible state, yet his etiquette was impeccable as he lowered his eyes and said, "I wouldn't dare to trouble you, thank you for asking." Yu Xiaoze saw the Zhaoan bag hanging around the man's waist and realized that this man was a scholar. He could not help but feel more deeply concerned as he turned his head back to say to Shen Zequan, "Vice Commander, he doesn't seem to be a wicked person to me. Why don't we?" "Vice Commander." The man's tone suddenly changed. "Vice Commander Shen Zequan." The surrounding Jin Yue promptly held onto their blades. Shen Zequan raised a hand as a gesture for them to hold it and asked, "Are we old acquaintances?" The man felt a tidal surge of emotions. He wanted to say something, but he ended up coughing out blood. The jut on his throat bobbed and his coughing grew even more intense as his pale, trembling fingers bent and dug into the ground, gouging out tracks while he mumbled over and over again, Shenzhequan, it's you. This voice gave Jiao Tianya a sense of déjà vu. He turned around. Shenzhequan slowly crouched down and looked directly at the man. The man moved away the handkerchief covering his lips and propped himself up on the ground with his arms. His eyes seemed to have been set ablaze, filled with the madness of someone who was staking it all on a cast of the dice. He lifted his head. Just as everyone thought he would wail and go hysterical, he let out a very soft laugh. This laugh was like the ripple of spring waters, fleeting and ephemeral, before it quickly plunged into a bottomless abyss of raging inferno, where the fire burned everything clean along with his unbending pride and free spirit, turning an immortal free from worldly cares into a pile of filthy ashes. Jiao Tianya recognized him now. A veil of misty rain descended upon past memories of a pair of like-minded confidants playing the guqin under the willows amidst the lush scenery of spring. That upright, one-of-a-kind young master in green had also ended up with his legs broken by another. Just like that, the unpolished jade that Hai Lianji and the Yao clan had cherished and treasured for half a lifetime had been so easily besmeared with mud. Qiao Sanjiao suddenly felt at a loss. He intuitively felt that he should not continue staring at Yao Wenyu like this, but he once again saw himself in him. They both lived in the Moon Palace. Qiao Sanjiao had descended, and a dashing, fan-holding young master of a prominent clan had turned into a blade-wielding, down-and-out Jiao Tianya. He thought their chance encounter was transient, but he never expected that they would be fellow sufferers commiserating with each other the next time they met again half a year later. The word commiserate was truly overwhelmingly agonizing. Jiao Tianya hastily averted his gaze, unwilling to look any further. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. It was already late at night, and the lights inside the house were not very bright. The physician's apprentice came out with the prescription in hand. Fei Shen took it and handed it over to his subordinate to fill the prescription of medicinal herbs. The few of them were standing in the corridor. Ding Tao was surprisingly well behaved as he held that cat in his arms. Fei Sheng forced a smile and said to Jiao Tianya, who would have expected it to be him? This. What was there for him to say? Stories of the unpolished jade Yuan Zhou Yao Wenyu had been widely circulating for many years in Chu capital, and in all of them, he was hailed as a banished immortal, a wayward genius living amongst common men. Even Fei Sheng, who had never associated with the literati, had heard much of this name. Who would have thought that the free and unfettered wanderer of the rumors would end up in such a state? He was even more downtrodden than Yu Xiaozhe when the latter first came. Yu Xiaozhe had already cried once, and now he was facing the wall, overwhelmed with grief as he choked with sobs. How can they let the Grand Secretary down? Fei Sheng consoled in a dry voice, the way of the world is unpredictable. Yujing, please don't be too upset. Jiao Tianya leaned against a pillar in the corridor, hidden under the shadows. He did not say a word. They had not stood for long when Kong Ling saw the physician out and beckoned to them. Jiao Tianya fell a few steps behind and bowed his head down to ask the physician a few questions. The physician answered him truthfully, and Jiao Tianya fell silent for a few moments, then turned aside to let someone send the physician away. The bamboo blinds that had been let down in the room kept out some of the candle light. The interior had been partitioned off. Shenzhequan sat outside the partitioned area and said something to Zhou Gui in hushed tones. On seeing them enter, he only said, Fei Sheng, you will be on night watch. Ding Tao, go back to your courtyard and sleep. Yujing, there's no need to worry. The kitchen is decocting the medicine as we speak. Yu Xiaozhe turned aside to take his seat. After a moment of silence, he spoke, Young Master Yao. Kong Ling was a perceptive and empathetic man. He knew it was inadvisable to discuss it in detail here. Bemoaning Yao Wenyu's fate or showing Yao Wenyu pity were tantamount to torture to Yao Wenyu at this point. It was no different from death by dismemberment. So, he rose to his feet and led Yu Xiaozhe. It's already late. Yujing, young Master Yao has only just arrived. Let him rest for a night. It's not too late for us to come visit him again tomorrow. With that, he turned back to bow to Shenzhen and said to Zhou Gui, we still have to discuss matters in the study later. Your Excellency, please come with me, too. Yu Xiaozhe, having received a gentle reminder from Kong Ling, followed suit and rose to his feet to bid his farewell, too. Before he left, he cast a glance at the inner room and saw the shadows of trees intersecting with the flickering shadows of the candle light. The man within was silent. Yu Xiaozhe thought of Hai Lianji once more. His eyes involuntarily reddened. Holding back a long sigh, he hurriedly strode across the threshold of the door. The night was bleak, and the veil of moonlight cast upon the flowers and plants in the courtyard made them appear sickly and listless. The few wind chimes hanging under the eaves swayed with the wind, dancing to the tinkling tune of metal against metal. Yao Wenyu lay on the couch, his consciousness scattering to the beats of the wind chimes. In his trance, he had returned to Chu capital. Misty rain pervaded Chu capital. Yao Wenyu donned mourning attire and sent off Hai Lianji to Mount Bodhi. This mountain was once the burial site of his paternal grandfather, and now, it was the burial site for his teacher. He stood in that drizzle, unable to take in the scenery, unable to recognize the way that could take him back. The Yao clan had produced scholars of great talents who became renowned throughout the realm. They were full of vigor in the successive reigns of Great Zhou, and they were also the mainstay of the divisive noble clans. But during Emperor Guangjing's reign, Old Master Yao revolutionized the clan's traditions and renounced the prejudices between family status. He reached out to the common descendants of humble origins who were denied opportunities due to a lack of connections to the powerful and influential. From then on, the Imperial Academy flourished. The Yao clan began exploring a different path, but this path came to a premature end in the hands of the Empress Dowager, Hua Huai and Hua Saiqian. By the time it came to the generation of Yao Wenyu's father, the Yao clan was already on the decline. Although the Yao clan still had some influence and prestige left, it was no longer on the same level with what it once was during the time when Old Master Yao had been alive. The most fatal of all was that the Yao clan was faced with a dearth of descendants in this generation, having produced only a single Yao Wenyu. The rest were all descendants from the branch family of the clan, and there was not even one amongst them who had come out on top in the imperial examinations in spring. In recent years, the 8 clans had all undergone a change in heads and members. The Yao clan was no longer able to command the same level of respect from the others. Most of the juniors in their clan who still served as officials were in idle positions with practically no obligations, none were third-rank ministers in esteemed positions like those from the Wei clan. Although Yao Wenyu was a student under Hai Lianji and was friends with many of the literati, he had no scholarly honor or official position to his name. He had not married Commandery Princess Zheyu of the Fei clan either. Other than the reputation he had for his talent, he had nothing at all, and in the end, even his reputed fame had forsaken him. He was like the falling leaves on this mountain, reduced to nothing but mud. Worthless. Qiao Tianya lifted the bamboo blinds and turned sideways to step aside. Shenzhen entered the room and sat on the chair that the physician had previously sat on to take pulses. As the candle light flickered, Shenzhen spoke, "You've been poisoned by someone. It's inadvisable for you to stay out in public. If you don't mind, you can stay at my home. My teacher and yours are considered colleagues, and you are old friends with Cian. There's no need to stand on ceremony." Yao Wenyu's freshly washed face was a picture of calm as he continued to listen to the wind chimes beneath the eaves. After half a moment, he answered, "There's no need to be so tactful. The reason I came to Tse province was to seek refuge and throw in my lot with the vice commander." Shenzhen rested his folding fan on his knee and said, "I'm now living under another's roof, making a living and trying to get by. I only dare to be called brothers with you, not master and servant." The revival of Tse province was in no small part due to the efforts of the vice commander. The heavy trauma inflicted upon this body one after another was meant to kill him. Yao Wenyu started coughing again. He was but a single scholar. It would prove to be hard to eradicate his illnesses now that they had taken root in his body. He was now heavily ill, much weaker and frail compared to half a year ago. He clutched his handkerchief, covering his mouth for a moment before continuing. I heard about the vice commander's deeds on my journey here, and I'm of the opinion that the vice commander wasn't trying to obtain the 6 prefectures of Zongbo but the Chu capital. Once the trade routes between Tse province, Cha province, and Huai province are established, it will be able to provide direct access to the mutual trade market in Libei to the northeast, and keep the grain routes of Qidong in check towards the southeast. The military forces of Great Zhou on both ends using the routes will have to pass through the vice commander's scrutiny. The way they fight and the timing of their battles in the future will all lie in the hands of the vice commander. Shen Zequan brushed open his folding fan with his fingertips and set it on the handle of the chair. He did not respond. Furthermore, the geographical position of this trade route is special. If the vice commander thereby establishes a trade route town, Chu capital's east, south, and north sides will all be as good as secured. The 8 great training divisions have limited military strength, so it'd prove impossible for Chu capital to break through the vice commander's siege on all 3 sides if they don't have assistance from Qidong in the future. Yao Wenyu cast a sidelong glance at Shen Zequan. The vice commander is a visionary man with great foresight, strategizing ahead for years down the road. Shen Zequan stared at Yao Wenyu. If not for the fact that this person was in such dire straits, even Shen Zequan himself would want to kill him. More so the others. Shen Zequan had multiple explanations regarding the intent for the trade routes between the prefectures of Tse province, Cha province, and Huai province, but it was what Yao Wenyu said that was his real motive by making the Chu capital lose its direct military route with Libei. Not only could Cha province contain He province, it could also obstruct Qidong's provision supply routes. Shen Zequan wanted to encircle Chu capital. But Qi Ziyan might not be willing to give the vice commander time. Yao Wenyu could not hold back his coughs, covering his lips with a handkerchief again and again. She is watching each and every one of your moves from behind in Qidong. She'll see through it, eventually. If the vice commander is successful with this move, it's naturally all's well that ends well, but if it falls through, you'll be caught in an assault by both Chu capital and Qidong. When the time comes, you will be attacked from the front and rear. Even if Libei was willing to deploy troops to help, they cannot resist the Biancha cavalry and fight the garrison troops of Qidong simultaneously. The lack of military forces is presently the most fatal chink in the vice commander's armor. That is why the vice commander is linking up Tse province and Cha province, reorganizing the census registers and taking in refugees. It's all for the sake of quickly establishing an army under your command. Shen Zequan snapped his fan shut and said with a smile, Yao Yuanzuo's reputation is truly well deserved, but with your level of intelligence, how did you end up wandering the streets of Zongbo? If you want to build a career, the climate in Chu capital is perfect right now. Regardless of whether it's the Empress Dowager or the Grand Secretariat, they are all better able to pay the price you deserve than this Shen Zequan can afford. Yao Wenyu made to sit up, so Qiao Tianya stepped forward to help him up and put a pillow behind his back for support. He did not look at Qiao Tianya, it was as though he did not recognize him. With his long fingers holding onto the handkerchief, he turned his head aside and coughed into the handkerchief. The muffled sound of coughing persisted for quite some time. He stared at the shadows on the wall and answered in a hoarse voice, Shui Yanqing, in his support of the heir apparent to the throne in Chu capital, coerced the Grand Secretariat and Her Majesty the Empress Dowager and schemed to lead the Imperial Academy into pushing for reforms. However, it's my belief that Great Zhou is already beyond cure. Rather than restore Chu capital to its former glory, why not demolish it and rebuild it from scratch? Should the Great Zhou lose its deer, all under heaven will chase after it. Even a commoner of humble origins like Lei Changming has had the desire to reign supreme. When Chu capital's reforms are put into action, people in all other places will begin to rise in rebellion. Disputes among the heroes are inevitable. The Li clan's emperor is already too powerless to turn the tide around. Yao Wenyu turned back and looked attentively at Shen Zequin amidst the dimming light. Complex emotions swam amidst the reignited fire in his eyes as he enunciated each word. Anyone in the world can sit on the throne. The Li clan can. So why not you, Shen Zequin? Shen Zequin held up his folding fan and replied coldly, my aspiration lies not in this. You can't fool me. Yao Wenyu spoke under his breath. You're on this path right now. I can much as well support someone else to the throne. Shen Zequin smiled. There is more than one person with the surname Li in this world. 6 years ago, when the troops of Zongbo suffered a defeat, you lost everything. And 6 years later, when Chu capital suffered another defeat, you lost it all once again. When the next 6 years come around, Yao Wenyu's lowered eyes were distant and detached. Will you still be willing to place your life and destiny in the hands of another? You are completely unsuited to be a mere subject of the state. Being subjected to the control of others has already become a lifelong indignity of yours. There was an abrupt shift in the atmosphere within the room. Shen Zequin grasped his folding fan with his fingers. Although he was quiet, he still looked as if he could kill without qualms in the next moment. It was impossible to read what was in those expressive eyes of his. The wind chimes outside the window tinkled, and bleak shadows of rustling trees fell upon the edge of his robes, on which he trod beneath his feet. Shen Zequin abruptly smiled. If Mr. is willing to play for my cause, then all matters in the future regardless of its significance can be discussed. Qiao Tianya, serve the tea. Yao Wenyu accepted the tea and stirred the foam aside, but he did not drink it immediately. His wrist was of the same color as the teacup, but it was piteously thin and frail. He gazed at the floating tea leaves and said, self-deprecatingly, you can skip the title. I lost to Shueziaozuo in Chu capital, got both of my legs broken and came too close to losing my life. Didn't you ask me why I came here? Yao Wenyu was silent for a while and continued, because I want to finish this game of Wiki with Shueziaozuo, win or lose, live or die. End chapter.